Hi, this is Bill Hartzer, and this is the Digital Marketing Podcast with Bill Hartzer for Thursday, July 16th, 2020. I have the unique pleasure of having Stephan Spencer here of stephanspencer.com. And welcome, Stephan. I know I've known you for years. I know that you do a lot years ago in the SEO space, but also in the digital marketing space. So tell me a little bit about yourself and your background and kind of how you got into the SEO and digital marketing world.
Yeah, I've been doing SEO and digital marketing since the 90s.
Sure.
I dropped out of a PhD in biochemistry to start an agency called Net Concepts, ran that for 15 years, sold it. In the middle, I had this crazy idea to go move to New Zealand, never even having stepped foot there. I applied for permanent residency, got in, convinced my wife at the time and kids to move halfway around the world. So yes, you can be location independent. It works. And stayed there for almost 8 years. I have 3 books with O'Reilly: The Art of SEO, Google Power Search, and Social E-commerce. This is The Art of SEO, which I'm holding up right now. It's 1,000 pages. I'm a co-author of that. 3rd edition. So each edition seems to grow by like 250 pages, which makes the publisher pretty antsy because the bigger the book, the fewer copies the sell. But like, what half of SEO am I supposed to leave out? Like, I don't know. So that's a little bit about me.
Great. So I know that I had actually some questions I wanted to ask you a little bit, and started with, I know that, what you've done kind of SEO, and you're at a point where, you think you've done a lot. Obviously SEO is an ongoing thing, but if you've got a good handle on that, and also, you maybe have some paid campaigns and going and so forth. And I guess the next step after that would be start to think about getting media attention, get more, essentially get your brand and your company name, even if it's your personal name, out there a little bit more. So what are some of the steps to start thinking about, getting media attention? And obviously that's leads to, hopefully just getting, more brand awareness overall.
Yeah. Well, one thing a mistake that I made early on was to focus on the company's brand and not at all my own.
Sure.
So my personal brand needed to get time and attention, some TLC, in addition to the Net Concepts brand. So when I sold my agency, all that brand equity went to the acquirer, and I didn't have anything really to stand on. So I had to build up my personal brand from then, and I'm not going to make that mistake ever again. So do focus on your personal brand as well as your company brand, and recognize they're different things. And there's also a difference between being an authority and being a celebrity. So you could get celebrity status by being on TV. Celebrities are on TV. They're on the red carpet. They're on TV and on like news programs and things like that. Whereas an authority, maybe on podcasts, might be cited in articles, and maybe an occasional radio interview, but they're not really on TV. So try to aim for that celebrity status, because you will be able to charge more. You will be able to, more selectively pick your clients, et cetera. Yeah. So as far as kind of a strategy around this, try to find something where you can be the only in that, right?
Sure.
So if you're the only for a particular area, let's say it's for featured snippets, or it's for rank brain, or for just AI in general, AI specific to Python, right? So machine learning in Python, like Hamlet seems to be taking that space. So find a niche, or even a micro niche, and be the only in that, if at all possible. And then you want a multi-pronged strategy. If you're willing to get on TV, that's the best because
Yep.
that celebrity status, and start with kind of the lower level markets, the local smaller markets first, and then work your way up. So I didn't start, my first TV appearance was in Tucson. It
Okay.
wasn't Phoenix or Sacramento. Like those were later on after I had a few under my belt and I was more comfortable being on TV. I seemed more natural. Because
Sure.
if you are still you're trying to get on Good Morning America or the Today Show as a first go, like first of all, they're not going to want you because you don't have the experience and you probably freeze on air, and that's a
Yep.
disaster for everybody. So they want you to have had experience, but also you just learn how to pitch better and how to be more like appropriate on TV. Like if you're going to uh, be on TV, you would never wear a shirt like this because no, like depending on the size of your screen, you'll see the moire pattern,
Yep.
and that's not good for TV. So you want to wear solid colors. You don't want to wear stripes or polka dots or anything like that. So
Sure.
all this stuff you're going to learn just from kind of the school of hard knocks, maybe getting some media training. I went to a workshop called Celebrity Launchpad that helped me to learn a lot of kind of the details behind it, because the devil is in the details, right? So if you're making a pitch to a TV producer and, for example, you got through the gatekeeper and they're semi-interested, but they're busy. They're in the middle of something. And they say, can you
Yep.
just shoot me an email with more details about this? Like with your one sheet or segment proposal. Can you send that to me via email? Have the email ready to go, where all
Yep.
that you have to do is put in their email address and then hit send. And then you
Sure.
say, sure, can you give me your email address? And okay, is it da, 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 da. Hit send. Can you check to see if you got it? Are you in front of your computer? Can you just check, make sure that you got it?
Yep.
And then can you make sure that the attachment opens? Always send a PDF, never any other kind of attachment.
Sure.
Yep. Oh, wow, that looks good. You got the celebrity attachment angle to it, and you've got some celebrity pictures in there
Yep.
of different actors and actresses, and you've got some great stats, and you've got a local angle to it. Like, oh, you got some stats that are for their local market, Phoenix or whatever the market is. The answer is always yes. Like I called on a Sunday, one TV producer in the middle of the night, like 4 or 5 in the morning. And she said, are you available this week, Saturday? And I'm in LA
Sure.
and she's in Phoenix, or the TV station's in Phoenix. I'm like, yeah, of course. And then sometimes they'll ask, are you here for other business? If you say no, like I'm coming specifically for you, they'll say, oh, we don't want you to make that effort and have that
Yep.
anyways. No. I'm going to be in town anyways. So please, let's go with this. And it's worth the flight. You just need to know how to leverage that TV segment that you got. Don't expect the phone to be ringing off the hook just because you were on a local TV show. You need
Yep.
to capture the clip. You need to do your magic with it. Take that, put it into little bits and pieces into a sizzle reel, do like a media page and have all your segments on there, capture that, put it onto your YouTube channel. Don't rely on it being just on the news station's website and YouTube channel, because who knows when they'll delete it. So you got to think through all these little things. You have a plan and you just start executing on that plan.
Yeah. So, so it's interesting that you mentioned that, because, just because you're on, say, in Phoenix and so forth, and you're on that episode, that's kind of where the work kind of starts. And if same thing with writing a bit, an article or a blog post or something, a lot of it is in the promotion afterwards, or the mentions and getting the mentions afterwards. And a lot of the work is, done after that, and not necessarily just, okay, in a preparation and so forth.
Yeah. I'll always go into it with the end in mind and know that
Yep.
like for example, if the reporter, the journalist, or whatever that media personality is, or the producer, if they have a habit of not linking to the sources or to the
Yep.
websites of the sources, then at least make a request. If you know that this is something that you want as an outcome, ask for it. If you don't ask, you won't get. That's a guarantee, pretty
Yep.
much, right? So know what you want going into it, and like aim higher, you'll do better, right? So if you want not just a link in the like web page that has the embed of the video on it and the little article, but you want to submit an article. So my oldest daughter, who's also an SEO like me, she's 29, if you can believe it. So yeah, I don't look that old, right? So
Sure.
she was on MSNBC talking about SEO. Surprisingly, it was a business
Yep.
show. Most of the time, you aren't going to be able to talk about SEO on TV because it's pretty boring for the average
Yep.
average Joe or Jill. But she was talking about SEO, giving 3 great tips, and then she pitched the TV producer, who actually in that case happened to be the host. A lot of times they're different people.
Yep.
She pitched her on a follow-up article. Like, let me expound on some of these tips about SEO, and I'd love to have that published on the MSNBC website. And it's great. So now she
Sure.
has a TV appearance and an article where she was able to drop multiple links in that article. Now, if you want as your outcome another TV appearance, come with another segment proposal or 3 that are all printed out, ready to go. After you just crushed it on your TV appearance, go say thank you to the TV producer, maybe even give them a gift, like, hey, thank you, little gift, not like a bribe, but like a little something, hopefully personal, that resonates with them. I once gave the TV producer behind the show, The Morning Blend in Tucson, I found out that he loves hot dogs, like gourmet hot dogs. So I brought him a package of not yet cooked, just from the grocery store, Nathan's Famous hot dogs. I'm a vegetarian. I don't eat that stuff. I don't even go in that aisle. But I went and got that, wrapped it up like a nice little present, gave it to him as a thank you after he had me on the show, just as a parting gift, and said, oh, by the way, I'd love to do a segment on X, Y, and Z, or any of the above. And here are the segment proposals. Do any of those resonate with you? And I got booked on the spot. He's like, yeah, let me get my calendar out and let's see when we can get you on for a follow-up appearance.
Sure.
Pretty simple.
So a lot of it is also that, you mentioned that, I mean, is building that rapport with them as well. And so one of my kind of, tips is that, what I've been doing is networking with, various producers and online personalities and so forth of, of the local stations around me, and through, Twitter and Facebook and so forth. And especially on Twitter, when they do, especially, and journalists and so forth and reporters will obviously tweet their articles and their stories and so forth. And I find I typically just comment on them, and so I'll have in time where I will, after 6 months to a year or so, you know then if something comes up and I have the opportunity to pitch something, or to, I already have that rapport with them. They've already seen my my tweets and comments back talking to them and so forth. And so it's not just a cold call situation, that they kind of know my name, if you will, ahead of time. And I've had some good
Yeah,
success.
you're investing in the relationship, and that's great to
Yes, exactly.
give them your positioning as a subject matter expert in X, Y, and Z topics, and just
Yep.
lead nurture them essentially, is a great strategy.
Yeah, and there have been times when they do know me as a certain type of expert, and so where they have reached out for with different requests and requests for quotes and so forth. And I've had some that have reached out and to me, and then and asked some questions, and it turns out that I wasn't necessarily the best, the best expert on what they really needed. I was able to, to basically refer them to somebody else, in my, local network. And so that is, especially with, in areas like certain national newscasts, CNN and so forth. And there are producers out there that do have, they do have Twitter accounts, and they show, they take photos and they show what they're doing and what, and so forth. And so you can kind of follow them and network with them as well.
Yep. That's all great stuff. And if you are interested in getting onto a national show, I recommend listening to an episode where I interviewed Rachel Hanfling. She used to be the TV producer for Oprah. And
Okay.
then she left Oprah after many years to work for Anderson Cooper.
Sure.
So she would get all the pitches.
Yep.
And she gives a lot of insight in her episode. It was episode 66 of Marketing Speak. I just looked it up. So that's a great resource. And she actually does offer some media training on how to get the attention and interest of TV producers, especially the big ones, like for big shows. Yeah.
Now, certainly, I know that there's some people probably listening or watching that, they're the ones that don't necessarily want to be on the air, don't want to necessarily, be the ones, so there are obviously, opportunities like, for example, just to be on podcasts and on radio and so forth. Then you can also, you could have somebody in mind in your organization who kind of could be the spokesperson for essentially your organization. Doesn't necessarily have to be, the CEO of the company. Could be somebody who is, a C-level, or just someone who you designate as the, the spokesperson. So I know that there are people listening and watching that probably don't say, oh, well, I could never be on TV, or I could never do that. And so that, what are your suggestions around that in finding, I guess the right person in your organization who would be, more photogenic?
Well, if you don't like being on TV, or you don't like being on camera, you could work on that fear or discomfort, or or you. So you could go after all these podcasts that are audio only. You could get on radio shows. I've been on radio shows in different parts of the world, like Ireland, for example. Sure. And you could just do it in print, like focus on print opportunities or online journals and magazines. And it's all opportunity. It's just a question of where you have the most desire to kind of delve into. If you wanted to get mentions and be a subject matter expert, somebody quoted a lot in newspapers, then you could do cold pitches. And of course, it's better if you have built the relationship over the last 6 months or year, like you're doing. But you could just do a cold pitch, but have something that's insightful, not a press release, but something that you offer as an insight to especially a recent article of theirs. Yep. So that you show that you've read their stuff and you've got something interesting and thought-provoking to say, not just a pitch. That's a brilliant strategy, because now you've got something that it is relevant to them. It's like a continuation of a conversation, and even though it's a brand new conversation, it's a continuation of something they've already been working on. Yep. Like I did this with another client, pitched the Denver Post, a particular journalist. Like most of these newspapers, they'll put the name and the email address of the journalist who wrote the article. Sure. So you can see what their past articles were and find one that's recent, have something insightful to say, and say that thing and wait for them to respond. Don't just lead in with a mini press release. So that can work really well. And you don't have to be on TV or on podcasts for that. Now, one nice thing about being on podcasts is that most podcasts have show notes, and they include all the links mentioned in the show notes. So
Yep.
you could say, well, I've got X resource and Y resource, and I've got this podcast and so forth. And if there's good reason for the host of that podcast to mention those things and provide the links, you're going to get links just by the nature of it's a podcast and has show notes. So like I mentioned that Marketing Speak interview with Rachel Hanfling. I have a feeling that might end up as a link in your show notes for this episode, right? So that's,
yes, definitely. I'll definitely mention it. Yes.
so it's strategic. It's value added, and I have the end in mind.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then, finally, one thing I'd like to mention is that, it pays to do, I guess, some persona research. And so identify, for example, where, if you are an e-commerce site or providing a service or so forth, you want to kind of identify what kind of podcasts, TV shows, radio, news outlets, magazines, newspapers, and so forth. Where do your ideal customers hang out? When they, the first thing with, if they're over breakfast and their coffee, do they pull out the Wall Street Journal, or do they look at, a particular, tech news website, or do they, or are they watching the local news and your local business? Maybe there's, and so having that in mind, obviously if you're a B2B company and, you don't necessarily, want to be on, a local newscast because, that's more consumer related, versus, okay, if there are particular publications that are in your industry and so forth that are B2B, that's where you would probably want to focus your efforts a little bit more. So it kind of depends, kind of how.
Well, I've got a great tool for this that will find all those gems that are specific to your industry, specific to your target market.
Okay.
One is, one tool that is like the go-to tool for this is called SparkToro. SparkToro.com. Rand Fishkin's new startup after he left Moz. And he's my co-author on the first 2 editions of The Art of SEO. And oh my goodness, this is an amazing tool. So you can put in the URL of a competitor. You could put in a Twitter or other social account of a competitor or of your own business. You could put in a keyword that people are talking about on social media, and it will aggregate that audience together.
Sure.
And then show you all the podcasts they listen to, with percentages of overlap, or like what percentage of that audience is listening to that particular podcast, or subscribed to that particular YouTube channel, or following that particular social account, or visiting that particular website. Oh my goodness, it is an incredible tool. I love that tool. Sure. And it's not prohibitively expensive. You get actually 10 free searches a month. They're not complete with the data that you get. It's truncated. Yeah, you should just get a paid account with it. It's worth it.
Sure. Sounds great. That's SparkToro, SparkToro.com. SparkToro.com. And I'll mention that's also in, show notes, blog posts and descriptions and so forth as well. Yeah. We're just about out of time. So how do we get in touch, Stephan, with you? I know you have also more podcasts as well.
Yeah. So I have my main website is stephanspencer.com. Yep. I have a ton of resources there, downloadable guides and things about how to select an SEO, an SEO BS detector, kind of trick questions, all sorts of great resources there. I have my 2 podcasts, marketingspeak.com and getyourselfoptimized.com.
Okay.
And yeah, you can email me direct, Stephan@stephanspencer.com. I'd love to hear from you. And oh, and if you're wanting to delve deeper into this whole authority building thing, I do have an online course on stephanspencer.com called The Authority Builder.
All right, sounds great. This has been the Digital Marketing Podcast with Bill Hartzer, and for July 16th, 2020. Again, thanks, Stephan Spencer, for spending the half hour with me and talking, about getting media coverage and so forth, and which ultimately does build your authority and trust and so forth in the online world. Thanks again, Stephan. We'll be in
Thank you,
touch. We'll
Bill.
see you online. Thanks.